One of the more fun variants of period chess is Byzantine chess. This is a circular medieval chess that we find very well described from the Persian author Muhammad ibn Mahmud Amuli in his Treasury of the Sciences in 1325. The beauty of this is it's very similar to most forms of medieval chess, so there's not a lot to learn that is new if you're familiar with playing medieval chess at all. The big difference is obviously the board is circular. And while there are a number of variants, this more simple variant that he describes, you cannot pass through the central area in any way. And the play with this occurs on two fronts. You have to be aware of what's happening on both of those if you want to win. The pieces move very same as the majority of medieval chess variants that we have. The pawn, representing the foot soldier, moves one square forwards. It takes in a diagonal, so if it comes up to where there is an opposing piece on a diagonal, instead of moving one square forward, it can, if it chooses, move one square diagonally in order to take that piece. It can't move diagonally if no enemy piece is in the diagonal square. Its option at this point would be simply to move forward again until coming into contact with enemy. A pawn could theoretically end up circling the board if the way becomes clear. But if it should happen that a pawn would make it to the opposite side of the board and end up facing a pawn from its own side, this can only continue to move forwards, this can only move forwards for it, so they would block each other. They will sit there until the opposing player decides to remove them. The opposing player can remove them at this point, it doesn't count as a go. So if I was the black player and these two pawns have now come face to face there, I can simply take two of them out of play. Then moving to the greater pieces. So the king can move one square in any direction, diagonally, forwards or backwards or to the sides, so that every square surrounding the king is an option for the king to move to unless blocked by one of their own pieces. The king can, of course, take any piece that's in there, as long as doing so doesn't place the king in check. So if this piece was there and another piece was here, because a pawn can take diagonally, it is covering this piece. If the king were to try to take this piece, it would be moving into check, and on the next move, the enemy pawn would be able to take the king, thus ending the game. Because of this, the king is never allowed to move into check. So if the king was here, the king would be prohibited from moving into a position where it could be taken on the next move. If the king ends up in this position, the king is required to move out of check in its next move. It could move to any of the available squares that isn't covered by another piece. The goal in the end of the game is to checkmate the king, which is to say that there is nowhere the king can move that will get it out of check. So for example, in this setup, the king is under check from this rook, which can move any number of ranks or files, sideways, forwards, back. So it could take the king on the next move. The king must therefore move out of check. But it can't move to here or here because this rook is also covering those. So its only options are to move inwards to the inner circle. If it moves in here, on its next move, this rook places it back in check, but now there is no square that the king can move to that will get him out of check. Still in check, still in check, still in check. None of his own pieces can move to protect him by taking one of these or blocking the line of sight, so this would be checkmate. And what we're aiming for is a checkmate. The next piece we come to is what we think of as a modern bishop, but which is referred to as an elephant. And this moves just like bishops or elephants in medieval chess, where it hops over one square, landing on the second. It doesn't harm whatever it hops over. So if there was an opposing piece here and the elephant hops over, this piece is unharmed. The elephant takes by landing on a piece. So if it lands on a square that has an enemy piece in it, it can remove that piece. You can't take your own pieces, only the enemy pieces. Because of this very limited movement of the elephant, it will never be able to enter the inner ring of the board. It will be limited to being on either the first ring or the third ring. It's quite a limited piece, but still has its uses. Next we come to the knight, which moves like a modern knight. It moves two squares and then one to the side. So this could be two squares and then one to the side like so, two squares and one to the side like so. It is a very powerful and versatile piece, and it can jump over pieces in between. So it could hop over the pawn, two forward and one to the side, and take whatever it lands on. The next piece that we come to is the rook, which just like a modern rook can move any number of rows straight forward or side to side. It cannot move diagonally, just left, right, forwards, back. It can't jump over pieces, so it doesn't have the option to do that. It can only move on an open, unobstructed square. How it takes is it can land on an opposing piece and remove that piece. The rooks are the most powerful piece in Byzantine chess, and perhaps more so than even in other forms of medieval chess, because if the way is clear, a rook from one side of the board, if it has a clear line of sight with no pieces blocking, it can move right round and engage the enemy on the opposite side of the board in a single movement. It can move any number of squares following that line. And very often the rook becomes the winning piece because of this capacity to move so far. Here, people might be concerned about the attack of the rook on this side. It's very easy to have our attention and focus go to one part of the board. But in a single move, when the way is clear, it can move right round and take a piece on the opposite side of the board. And very often this is what opens up the game to being very close to one. The next piece is the councillor, what we would think of as the mother and queen. But the councillor moves one square diagonally. So the councillor will always remain on their own colour and will be able to move simply like this, one diagonally. The councillor takes by landing on a square with an opposing piece in it and then removes that piece. So a very simple piece, not all that useful, and a lot of people expect it to be a very useful piece because they're used to a mother and queen. This change where people find that the queen is not very powerful and the change in strategy because it's a circular board makes this a really excellent game for people to start learning on. If they come up against somebody who's familiar with modern chess, the advantage of knowing modern chess is largely dissipated by the changes in how the pieces move and very much by the strategy that comes with a circular board. They can't rely on what they've learned in modern chess, and that can make it a lot more fun for people who are beginning to learn to play chess. This is my top pick for a fun, easy to learn medieval chess game. All you need for this is a standard set of chess pieces and to make a circular board. And that can be quite simple, just to cut out a circle from wood and just mark out and stain the squares. Hope you like this, hope you have fun playing it, and thanks for being with me.